Bases dropped on a sad morning. It's an interesting feeling after this season ends. Atlanta United loses 2-1 to Toronto last night at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. There's a lot of different emotions in this. It's hard to feel completely sad. It was a 2-trophy season, and Atlanta United won 28 matches in 2019. There's a lot of good. It's also a lot left on the table last night in a match that Atlanta United had control of, a match that Atlanta United created far more chances in, a match that you've seen Atlanta United win many, many times in their history. But they couldn't get it done last night. They could not find the goals that were needed. Toronto found 2 spectacular goals, and we'll get into all of that as we go this morning. For those of you listening live, tweet at us at Soccer Down here. Share your reactions, whether they're over, whether they're under, whether they're on par, whether you think it was awful, whether you think it was okay, whether you're angry, sad, disappointed, whatever feeling you got this morning. We're going to try to get to everybody who tweets at us today and try to just put a wrap on everything as best you can. When you go into these kinds of games and you go into these moments, and I can only speak for myself in this, you know what's around the corner either way. You know that now in this one, you knew that you could be hosting MLS Cup final if you won. And you also know that, hey, this could be the last time this group is together. And there will be changes. I mean, there's changes after every season. Players come, players go. Some of their own volition, some not. You know those things are going to happen every time. And this is a group that I think you can tell in the way that they play, they have a special feeling for one another. They have a special feeling for this city, and it's the last time that the 2019 Atlanta United group will play together. That's a sad thing. They know that their captain, Michael Parkhurst, is ending his career after this match, and the fact that Parky got back on the field last night and played the way he did, played very, very well. I was shocked that he was able to get back out there so quickly, and I don't want to say I was shocked that he was so good, but I was shocked that there were no issues from the shoulder injury that we saw, that we thought was going to end his career a little earlier than he would have liked and all of us would have liked. It was a rough night in the sense that it was a night that Atlanta United could have won. It was a night that Atlanta United did enough to win. And ultimately, we're not good enough in the final third. And Toronto was good enough in the moments that they had, which they didn't have very many, but they were the ones who converted. Atlanta could not. And Toronto moves on to the MLS Cup final, where they'll travel to Seattle now. Of all the places the MLS Cup final was going to be, Seattle was not on anybody's list when the postseason started, maybe except for the people up in the Pacific Northwest. It was not expected that they would be the highest seed remaining in the postseason once you got to the final. And it wasn't expected Toronto would be there, not after a tumultuous start to the season with the Sebastian Giovinco news, with Victor Vasquez leaving, with the frequent injuries of Josie Altidore, with just a lot of difficult moments in the transfer window of getting guys in. But this is a team that hasn't lost since August 3rd. They don't make it easy for anybody. And it wasn't easy for Atlanta United last night. And Toronto's a team that will punish you if you don't put them away. And Atlanta United had opportunities to put them away. They didn't. Toronto hung around. Nicolas Benezet with a beautiful goal. Nick DeLeon ultimately with the kill shot. And that's it. This is what it sounded like on 92.9 The Game last night. It started really well. Julian Gressel opened the scoring.
Here's Barco chopping it down the middle, and Pity Martinez onside on the breakaway. Pity into the box. A pass to Gressel. Shot. Score! Gressel, man, he is running wild on you again, brother! And Atlanta United has a goal in the 4th minute.
Then it looked like it was about to get even better.
Lorenowitz will stop on the edge of the right defensive third, send a long diagonal over the top to Pitti. It connects, and Laurent Simon can't tackle it away. Here's Pitti dribbling in, taken down in the box. Penalty! Michael Bradley! Action at the goal to our right as Atlanta United looks for a 2-0 lead as we cross into the 11th minute. Joseph Martinez with hands on hips, standing directly behind the ball. Gets the whistle. Joseph now steps to the left, trots up to the ball, strikes it, save! Westberg out to the right. It will stay in play and Oro will clear. Joseph misses a penalty for the 3rd time this year. It goes out for a throw to Atlanta United.
And how many times do you see it when a team misses a penalty, the other team ultimately capitalizes?
Simon will play a long diagonal to a wide-open Benezet in the left attacking third. Closed down by Gressel. Benezet, top of the 18. Turn, shot, score! Off the back post. 1-1. What a goal. A golazo by Benezet, and Atlanta United has conceded for the first time in the postseason.
Toronto tightened things up defensively. The penalty save by Westberg, the goal from Benezet, gave them a lot of confidence to continue on the path that they were on. Sit deep, defend, take your chances when you can get out and go. And they eventually found an opportunity in a little bit of controversial fashion, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it all morning long. But here's what the Nick DeLeon goal sounded like.
Bounce down the middle off the throw to Delgado to the far touchline where Justin Morrow digs for it and he's dispossessed. Nagbe, as Morrow goes careening into him. Play on, says Alan Kelly. Nagbe is still down. It's sent up now to Marky Delgado. Into center circle, Larea. Nagbe still down. Toronto plays on. Larea to Pozuelo, right attacking third. Pozuelo dribbles around Pogba. Top of the arc. Here's DeLeon. Tracking back is Gressel. He spins on the ball, looking for room. Here's a shot. Score. Toronto in the 78th minute.
Ultimate gut punch, because it's a wonderful goal from DeLeon. Atlanta initially handled the break well, but then switched off and gave Nick DeLeon way too much space. He buries it, and Atlanta had opportunities after that. They threw shots on. They had corner kicks. Brad Gazan comes up on corner kicks. They couldn't find the breakthrough. The last save was a pretty good one from Quentin Westberg at the near post on Leandro Gonzalez-Perez on a set piece, and that was it. Toronto's able to see it out and take the win. I want to play a bunch of post-match audio for you right now. John will join us in the next segment, recording an interview for an upcoming SDH 1v1. It's a busy time with lots of different things going on in the lower divisions, lots of different things going on kind of all over MLS at the moment. And now Atlanta United will be in that conversation as you start to look towards 2020 and what your team is going to be. But here's some of the post-match commentary. I know there's been a few questions about it. There will be, I think, at least one more day of media availability to close out the season. Generally, teams do exit interviews and such. I believe that's going to be next week. We'll let you know, and we'll probably be involved in some form or fashion to get some final comments on the season as a whole for you. But specifically about last night, this is how it felt for Brad Gazan.
I'm not thinking about the 2 cups that we raised earlier. That's irrelevant tonight. It's a disappointing feeling. It's a sense of anger, disappointment, frustration, a lot of emotion. So yeah, you have loads of the ball, you create chances, balls bouncing around the 6-yard box, what have you, and you fail to put the ball in the back of the net, and that's sports.
For Julian Gressel, season did not have the ending that it looked like it could have.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, can't forget that we won 2 trophies this year. The Open Cup and obviously the first MLS winner of the Campeones Cup MLS team. So it's definitely a very, very good year, I think. Coming off a short rest, I think we were the best champion, coming off of a championship season. So obviously, it didn't have the fairy tale ending that we wanted, and you can't get it every year, but, it's still, I think, long term, I think we'll still look very positive back to this year.
Jeff Larentowicz, who, in my opinion, was so big in the last month or two of the season, really turning back the clock with some huge performances for Atlanta United. His thoughts overall.
We come away with a lot of positives from the season, and tonight we play well, but we don't win. We had a good year. I think that we did a lot of really great things this year. I think we learned a lot as well. But tonight we came up short. We played 6, 7, 8 knockout games in a row this year, and the problem is with knockout games, you lose the last one, you're never going to feel good. I'd say it's a good year. If you're on a team that is consistently playing for trophies, then I think you can say it's a good year. You're putting yourself in the position to win, and that's what we've tried to do here. Unfortunately, tonight we didn't.
Jeff also talked about what 2020 could hold for him.
Certainly, but, that's something that is not my decision. That's how the MLS goes. That's how sports goes. But, I've been involved.
He is out of contract going into 2020 and said that he would like to be back. He also spoke on his teammate and captain Michael Parkhurst.
Wonderful that he was able to play a part in this run at the end. And to be honest, the fact that he bounced back after having his shoulder come out the way it did in that game was awesome.
Here's a couple comments from Parkey about, first, what happened on the second goal, the Nick DeLeon match winner.
I just remember, obviously we're upset about, we think it's a foul on Darlington, and, they catch us on a break, and we get guys back. We do well to slow up their counterattack right on top of the box, and DeLeon, and we have a few guys around him, and then I don't know what happens. Everybody thinks that somebody else is going to stay with the ball, and we start to pick up runners, and, for half a second we let him free, and he takes a great shot. But we should have had more pressure on the ball there, obviously.
Michael was also asked about what he will miss now that his career's over.
I don't know if the emotions have hit me yet. I'm just disappointed about the game. I'll probably think about the career here soon, but tonight is just unfortunate. It was right there for us to host again. And like I said, the great start, a great energy from the crowd tonight. It was awesome out there. And I'll miss playing in front of those types of atmospheres for sure.
Frank de Boer, in his post-match comments, revealed that there had been an injury scare with Joseph Martinez, also with Florentin Pogba, in training on Monday. Knew that both were a risk in playing, knew that there was potentially an injury that would force an early sub. Ultimately, wasn't the case for either one. But you could tell, and without even knowing exactly why during the match, you could tell that Joseph wasn't quite himself.
He chose his moments. So, sometimes you saw, he's not the Joseph, of course, that we want to see.
Frank also talked about the effort from his players last night.
I just told the boys, I cannot blame the guys, Of course, we have to make our opportunities. And we controlled, I think, 95% of the whole game.
We heard from Parkey about the Nick DeLeon goal. This is what Frank had to say about it.
One moment of a little bit lack of concentration. Darlington and Nagby was on the ground. People were thinking it's a foul. They didn't react well. Of course, it's a great goal, but it's the second time they shoot on the goal from distance and they scored.
And I think, as you've heard from all of the players, that how much this hurt because of the fact that it wasn't a game where you were blown out. It was a game where the opponent was able to take advantage of moments, and you were not. And sometimes it's a cruel way for things to end.
That's sport, and that makes it also the beauty of sport. It's a part of life, and we have to continue. And we had a great season, and we wanted to end it not like this, of course.
And also looking ahead to next year, as we said, this is a team that was built to have continuity early on. Now that you've completed 3 years, you are going to have contracts that come up. You are going to have options that you have to make decisions on. You are going to have to make decisions on players getting raises, players moving on. And Frank de Boer spoke a little bit about that as well.
Of course, we thought about it, but not, really focusing on it. But now we have to do that, of course. But that I'm going to discuss with Carlos, and he knows already a little bit my ideas. But of course, there always will be spots that can be improved. But I'm still happy, what I saw today, and it gives me a lot of confidence, for next season.
It's a lot to take in. There's a lot of different things that happened last night that had a hand in the outcome of this. There's a lot of different talking points, whether it's about the match itself, whether it's about the season as a whole, whether it's about what 2020 can bring. And there's a lot of unknown in that department because of contract situations that we don't have all of the information about. We don't know who is out of contract, who is on an option, what those option terms are. There's a lot of just lack of knowledge in that department. Also, and probably in an even bigger section here, is there's a lot of confusion and kind of wonder about what the CBA is going to look like and what changes that brings. I think most teams and most people around the league expect there to be an increase to the salary cap, an increase to the amount of spending that teams can do on their roster, but how much? And when you're talking about teams like Atlanta, like New York City, like LA, who ultimately are going to come up short in 2019 for winning the prize, MLS Cup, they're going to not want to be in that situation in 2020. They're going to want to spend and upgrade to avoid losing in the postseason. But they don't know how much they can yet. And they don't know what that could mean in terms of re-signing players and what that can mean in terms of signing new players. So it's a little hard to get detailed as to what's coming up around the corner, but we'll do our best and we'll keep you apprised of everything that we can. We're not going anywhere. We always get this question at the end of the season, like, are you guys going to stop doing the show? Or are you guys going to, take a break? And no, we're not. If anything, it probably gets more hectic in the off season in a lot of ways. We will be doing some live shows for people, and we can let you know that the first one will be coming up here in a couple of weeks, which is actually pretty cool, and it'll be right after MLS Cup. It will be at Six Bridges Brewing in Alpharetta, and it will be the night of November 14th. We're going to have a lot to talk about as the season will be over at that point for MLS. There will be decisions that will be either made or in the process of being made about contracts. There will be look ahead to the expansion draft. There will be a lot of things to get into live at Six Bridges on the 14th. And also, we've already talked about this one too, on the 19th at Beer Wild Heaven, at the West End location. We're going to have a kind of fun roundtable, something we've wanted to do for a little while, with myself, with Mike Conti, and with Kevin Egan, talking about the season, but also talking about kind of our experiences with the season. And, all of the questions that come our way at times about what's travel like, what's it like on a game day, how do you guys prepare, all of those kinds of things kind of behind the scenes of what we do. we'll talk about all of it. And it'll be an open session as best as we can and have a couple beers in doing it. So it should be a lot of fun. That's on the 19th at the West End location of Beer Wild Heaven. And on the 14th, Six Bridges in Alpharetta. Wanted to share that with you guys first before we create events, before we really make it a big public announcement, because you guys who listen every day, whether it's live or on the podcast, one, so many of you reached out after the match last night, which is just unbelievable. That's the feeling we have about this whole thing, right? That's the feeling we have about this club, is that it does feel like a family. And yeah, it hurts when the season ends. It sucks. Feel like you got hit by a truck and you didn't know it was coming. You knew it might be coming. You're stepping out into that street hoping that you timed it right, but no, you got hit by a truck. That's how I feel this morning anyway. I'm sure that's how a lot of you guys feel as well. So thank you to everybody who listens. Thank you to everybody who makes soccer down here and bigger than that. We're just part of it. Soccer in Atlanta, what it is. It's a very, very special thing, and I hope that you guys know how special it is, because when we do travel and when we do see soccer in other cities, there's honestly very few that have all of the different pieces that we have here around the game and around following the game and all of the conversations that we get to dig into here. We're going to take a quick break. It's Overreaction Thursday. That means it is your show. It is all about your reactions to last night, whether you are pleased with the season, angry with the season, disappointed about last night, angry about last night, you disagree with something I said, you agree, you have a question about something. Throw it our way on Twitter at Soccer Down Here, and we will dig into it starting after the break. Be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here. Halloween, October 31st. Atlanta United season is over. They come up one game short. They don't make it back to MLS Cup. They don't get to host it. It goes to Seattle. Toronto will be traveling out there late next week. We'll talk about that as well. We'll have plenty of time to dig into Seattle, Toronto, and preview that one next week. John Nelson is back after speaking to Nashville manager Gary Smith. We'll have that on the network here shortly. Nashville's in an interesting situation in the USL playoffs. They won their first USL Championship playoff match over the weekend, and they're in the Eastern Conference semifinals. But, you know, there's also a big thing coming up next February for them, playing your first Major League Soccer match.
And we got into that a little bit, talked about Matt Pickens a little bit, talked about what Gary has learned as manager for Nashville SC this season in this transition year. It was a really cool conversation to catch up with Gary. It had been far too long considering his ties to the Atlanta area. But that'll be up on the network. And also later today, John Harkes will be up on the network as well, putting a bow on the Greenville Triumph season.
All the superstars this week. It's been a busy one. We'll also have a women's soccer show coming up tomorrow that will have an interview with Jen Hildreth, who called the NWSL Championship match last weekend. We'll look back at that match, and we'll also look at, we've been kind of waiting to see what NWSL announcements we're going to get this week. There has been talk about agreements about what the salary can look like, what the cap in the NWSL can look like, what spending will look like. There's still some questions. We'll get into all of that and drop that for you tomorrow. So lots of stuff in addition to the morning show coming up on the SDH network. But it's Overreaction Thursday. That means we go back into the timeline, and we have gone all the way back to the first tweet after the game last night. I believe that's correct.
Yeah, pretty close, yeah. Yeah, Herschel Skywalker says Atlanta United deserved to lose. Not finishing that many chances is criminal, and allowing another team to score on that few is worse. Welcome to Atlanta sports.
I'm tired of the the welcome to Atlanta sports part. No offense, Herschel. But I don't think this team has been a typical Atlanta sports team. So I think you can put that to the side. Don't bring it in when things go bad. Ultimately, you deserve to lose because you can't finish. Of course. I mean, that's not a downtrodden, I want to yell and be angry comment. I mean, yes, you didn't score enough goals to win. I'll push back a little bit on the Toronto thing because you didn't allow them to score as much as, in my opinion, and I know there's going to be debate about the De Leon goal because everyone did get caught kind of backing up, and I think the players who talked about it explained that a little bit, where you've got guys who had recovered really well, but then in that pause, they all drop off to pick up runners instead of stepping to the ball. The miscommunication and the absence of Darlington Nagbe in that spot played a role in it. But you also can't take away from two very good goals from Toronto, two very good finishes. It wasn't bad goals that beat you.
Beneze's finish was absolutely tremendous.
De Leon's as well. I mean, both were great finishes. Both were great shots. They were shots from distance. The expected goals for Toronto was 0.1 because neither one of those goals were high percentage chances. So you didn't give it to them. They took it. They earned it. You didn't put them away. And that's what ultimately is going to hurt them most, because you had those opportunities. You had a penalty to make it 2-0. You didn't put it into the back of the net. You didn't find a second goal. And ultimately, you got beat on two good goals. It sucks, but that's soccer.
Carl Segge, he says, let it be known my team made me proud. If you would have asked many of us at the start of the season if we'd like 2 cups and a trip to the conference finals, we would have taken it. Remarkable season filled with highs and lows alike. The boys gave their all and came up short at the end, but never stopped, and that's all I can ask for.
Yeah, that's something that I think most people have echoed that, although I've seen a couple people saying Atlanta United didn't show up or whatever. I have to argue that in a big way. This felt to me, and I'll put Atlanta, LAFC, and NYC in the same situation, in that the expectation is to win MLS Cup for all 3 of those clubs, and none of them are going to do so this year. But I think the feeling about Atlanta's performance compared to LAFC, compared to NYC, is extremely different because of the fight you saw in this team, because of the obstacles they overcame. You didn't have a best 11 center back for the postseason. And you kind of forget it because you've played 2 games without Miles Robinson now. But, yeah, that has a huge impact. It had a huge impact last night. It had a huge impact in the previous 2 matches, but you were able to overcome it. That's going to end up being a big miss in this postseason. I think you're at MLS Cup if you have Miles Robinson. I do. I think you are able to play a little bit differently and commit a little bit more going forward against a Toronto team that I thought the way Bobby Warshaw explained it in his column was really strong, because it played in a lot of ways like a hybrid, either 5-4-1, depending on the situation, or a 4-5-1, because Pozuelo, for the most part, stayed up high. And this is before Patrick Mullins came in. It was Michael Bradley and his reading of the game. He dropped into the back line when he needed to. He moved into the midfield when he needed to. And sometimes he just filled the gap in between. And was very important to Toronto getting it done. And that's the intelligence. And that's why he gets paid a lot of money. So the fight was there. The quality from Toronto was there. And there was a miss. I think the miss of Miles Robinson definitely had an impact on this team. And then after the match, when we learned that Joseph Martinez, not 100%, Florentine Pogba, I couldn't tell that he wasn't 100%. I thought he really grew into the match and had one of his best performances in an Atlanta kit. I don't think there was an issue there at all. And Joseph, it's very easy to say after the fact, oh, he was injured, oh, he missed a penalty, oh, you should have sat him. You're not doing that. Nobody's doing that. If Joseph is healthy enough to be in the 18, he's going to start and he's going to play until he can't play anymore. He's that guy for you. You don't leave him out because he's not 100%. If he can go, he's going. And you can't come back now and say, well, he let you down and he was injured and he shouldn't have played. He should have taken himself out, or Frank should have done this. You're talking about the best goal scorer in a 3-year span in this history. You're talking about a killer. You're talking about a guy that you have to have on the field. No way you're leaving him out if he can play. And I think it's hindsight 2020 deal to look back at it and say, well, now you can see he shouldn't have played. Yeah, you had to play him. And you have to roll with it and see what you can get out of it. And you didn't get enough.
Someone who's the heart and soul and the voice and the presence of this team, who's the guy who's going to go swimming upstream in a river with the knife between his teeth. He's the one who decides how much you're going to get. And if it's time, he'll tell you it's time, even though it might be past that particular moment. But now if Joseph can get out there, Joseph's never going to tell you no. And
he's not going to tell you no, and you're not going to tell him no.
No, exactly. So that's my thoughts on the Joseph thing. John Vaught's one.
Hold on one second. I mean, it's just in all sports you see it.
Yeah.
I mean, if Tom Brady is banged up, he's playing if he can stand up.
Yeah,
you know that.
Kobe. Yeah, anybody like that.
Michael Jordan with the flu. I mean, all of it. The guy's gonna play, and you know he's not 100%. And you try to lift him up, and you try. And Frank talked about it a little bit. And he's not going to be able to make every run. He's not going to be able to get to top speed at times. He's not going to have that explosiveness. But you're going to take whatever you can get from a Joseph Martinez, because oftentimes it's better than you're going to get from anybody else in the league. So you roll with it and you see what you can get. Again, ultimately, it wasn't enough last night. But if you don't play him, then you're going to have an offseason of questions. Well, would a 70% or 75% or 60%, without knowing, we're guessing on the percentage, would that have been enough to get through? You don't want to have those questions. You play him and you find out, and we found out it wasn't enough on the night. You couldn't get the second goal. Toronto did.
At John Votts 1, Kenrick says that at pro referees are 2-0 in conference finals this season. That's his hashtag overreaction Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree in the LAFC game. I thought Marufo was consistent. I thought for the most part Alan Kelly was consistent. But both games, and the Atlanta one, I think it's a little more glaring because it was a 2-1 game instead of a 3-1 game. Both games have a situation, and I know some feel in LAFC there were multiple situations. I put it down to one. I put it down to the handball where Diamande is flicking it back to himself, and Xavier Arriaga has his arm out, and I thought he extended his arm towards the ball. Yeah. That's the one I had a big problem with. The other ones I don't have as much of a problem with. Last night, I do have a problem with the lack of a foul call on the tackle from Justin Morrow on Darlington Nagbe. I mean, you heard Mike Conti describe it as careening into him. It was reckless. I thought it was over the ball, and that's the bigger issue here is you can go in strong and win a tackle, and it's no foul. And he goes in, and he wins the ball. He gets to the ball. Darlington Nagbe's right there as well. They both get to the ball. But from the angle that I saw, and I don't believe there was another replay, and this was one that, thank you for, because I didn't get a chance to pull up the Fox Sports Go and rewind it and find it while we're in the booth last night. Thanks to Chris Levine for sending it my way. I thought that Morrow's left leg goes over the ball. And yes, he wins the ball, but he also takes Darlington Nagbe out in doing it. And you go over the ball, it's a foul in anybody's book. The interpretation from the AR on the far side from Alan Kelly was that there was no foul and play continued. Don't have a problem with Toronto continuing play. It's a big moment in the game. They're going to go for it. That's fine. But no foul, and then it did start the attacking phase of play, and I'll be curious to hear the interpretation, if we ever get one, and we probably won't, on why that wasn't reviewed, or if it was checked, why it was ultimately deemed not worthy of an on-field review. And if it's just because Alan Kelly saw it and felt like it wasn't a foul, I mean, that's your explanation, and that's what I'll go with until hearing otherwise. I know there's a lot of talk about the penalty and a potential red card to Michael Bradley as well. That one, I did not live feel like it was a red card. I felt like watching it live that there was another defender close enough at that moment. And honestly, yes, I know by the book, it's the same book for a regular season match and a postseason match. I understand that. But we all, I think, understand that postseason matches, the bar for cards, especially red ones, is extremely high, and it's higher than it normally is. Watching it live, I didn't feel like it was a red card. I didn't feel like it was dog-so. Michael Parkhurst talked about what Alan Kelly told him, and that jumps out to me because that changes the interpretation from what I saw initially. What I saw was that there's a defender close enough, it's not dog-so. But Alan Kelly told Michael Parkhurst, and this is from Parkhurst, it's not directly from Alan Kelly, it's secondhand, that the foul was not in the upper body. It was a foul committed with the lower body. I don't know if he specifically mentioned dog, so I don't think he did to Michael Parkhurst. But if he's talking about the difference between an upper body foul and a lower body foul, that's getting into dog-so interpretation, because remember the double and triple jeopardy conversation that we've had multiple times. I know we're getting deep into the weeds on refereeing, but I want you to understand the full context of the situation. When Kelly says it's a lower body foul, he's saying that that's a play on the ball. If it's a play on the ball and it's not a play on the ball that would always result in a red card, under the newer, it's been a few years since this came into effect, under the newer laws of the game around denying an obvious goal scoring opportunity, dog-so, you don't give a red card for a play on the ball along with the penalty. You don't do that. If he's telling Parkhurst that it's a lower body foul, he's saying it's a play on the ball. I didn't think it was a play on the ball. I don't think there's a lower body foul. I think it's an upper body foul. I think it's a grab. Yeah. I think it's an arm on the shoulder. Is it a light grab? Is it a light pull? Yes. But you call the penalty. And when you call the penalty and it's an upper body foul and it's not a play on the ball, and if you feel like it is denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity and you feel like there's not another defender there who can make the play, that's a lot of ifs, but trying to connect the dots from what he said to Michael Parkhurst, I think those ifs are accurate. If he's feeling like it's not a lower body, it's an upper body, he's saying that it could have been denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. And if that's his interpretation as to why it wasn't, not about another defender, but about how the foul was committed, I have to completely and utterly disagree. Because there's no lower body foul there. It's a grab. It's an upper body foul. And that's not a play on the ball. And that would be a denying obvious goal-scoring opportunity red card. I'll be curious to see, because there was a check done on it, because there always is on penalties anyway. I'll be curious to see if there is anything else that comes from this. I'll be curious to see if there's any statements from Pro about it, if there are questions made to them. I think Doug Robertson said on Southern Fried Soccer last night that he would be putting in a request for a statement on these, and we'll see if it happens. But connecting the dots, live I didn't feel like it was a red card, Dogso. But after hearing what Kelly told Parkhurst, I feel like he misinterpreted it, and it should have been if he feels like that other defender wasn't close enough. It's a long explanation, but it's a complicated situation, and it's not a clear-cut one.
And a lot of folks in the timeline last night were going back and forth talking about double jeopardy. Jessica Charman was one of them, and that was I thought it was important to bring in the double jeopardy element to
hope that
break that down.
Yeah, I hope that makes sense, because it does get deep into it, and it gets into interpretation. But if he's saying it's lower body, not upper body, that makes you think that Dogso played into it, and he's judging that it wasn't Dogso red, that it's not the double jeopardy situation, that it's yellow. And I'm disagreeing in the sense that I don't think it was a lower body foul. I think it's an upper body.
They were trying to spin shoulders and move arms. I didn't see anything.
That's his explanation. Like, in general, let's take the specific laws of the game out and let's just talk about the feeling of it. Honestly, I feel like ultimately that's probably what it should have been. But if his justification is what he said, I think he's incorrect, and I think he should have used a different justification if he wanted to get to where he got to, and not red card in that moment and in the match. I mean, a red card there, I think, even if Joseph Martinez goes on to miss the penalty, a red card that early in that moment to that player, Toronto's going to pack it in. They're going to defend. They're not going to be able to get out as much. I don't think they survive it. I think it ends the match, because you're already up 1-0. So Toronto's going to have to defend, but then at some point they're going to have to try to attack, because Atlanta doesn't have to risk anything at that point. So I understand from a referee's perspective not wanting to throw an early red card in a knockout game. I totally get it. But if his justification was what he said to Michael Parkhurst, I think he's wrong, and he probably should have chosen his words differently, because now it's more of an issue than I think it would have been.
Susan Laurie last night. Can't say that doesn't hurt, but we had a better run than anyone had a right to expect when we were struggling in March and April. Really proud of our team.
Yeah, I hope that people are proud of the team. I do, because I thought the effort was there. I thought that the team won 28 matches in 2019. They played 47. It's a lot of soccer. Mm-hmm. And a lot of really good soccer. And a lot of really good moments and 2 trophies and all that. No, it doesn't make up for a night where, man, you could have won that game and went on to host MLS Cup. And hosting MLS Cup, you have to feel pretty good about your chances. That's going to stick for a while, and that's going to hurt for a while. Yep. But I hope that people are proud of the effort, and I hope that people are proud of the work that the group put in as a whole.
Caleb Wright is placing the loss on Frank DeBoer, not doing anything to change the pace of the game soon enough. If he did, things might have been different.
Frank DeBoer doesn't set the pace of the game. I think that's a little unfair. I think the players do, and I think ultimately in this one, because of Toronto sitting deeper, the players struggled too quick in the pace. I thought when they did, they were more effective. There weren't a lot of options to make big, bold, attacking changes. This was the strongest attacking lineup you could have fielded last night. Tito Villalba was your impact attacking sub, and you turned to him immediately when you fell down 2-1. And he didn't deliver. He had a bad night. Again, doesn't take away from Tito Villalba's time in Atlanta, but he had a bad night last night. Was no help at all. You had Justin Merrim, you had Emerson Hyndman as well. I don't know if you would consider either of them game changers, and I don't know who they would have come in for, because Atlanta, in my opinion, was creating the chances. You didn't have Brandon Vasquez. There wasn't another attacking option. So it wasn't for a lack of chances. Now, changing the pace, I thought that the team came out in the second half and initially did a pretty good job of that. I thought at times they played a little faster. At times the ball moved a little quicker. At times they took a few more chances to try to open things up faster and not allow Toronto to sit deep. I'm going to assume that came from halftime discussion, but as the half went on and Toronto sat deeper, well, then this is what happened. And ultimately, I mean, you look at it, it's two moments where Toronto, it's a long ball from Simon to Benazet. He wins the 1v1 and puts in a brilliant shot. And it's a situation where there is a foul on the other end. Atlanta recovers well as Toronto breaks, but a moment of indecision. Everyone looks for someone else to make the step to the ball. Everyone also looks to pick up the runs as De Leon peeled off, and you get caught in it. It happens to every team. You get caught. I don't think that's on Frank. I don't. You can have questions about the lineup. Should you have held an attacking player back from the lineup to use as an impact sub? I think there would have been questions about that if you'd went that direction. You had the group that could have won the match. You created the chances to win the match, and ultimately the performance wasn't there to win the match. I don't put it on Frank from a tactic standpoint, because I don't know what he could have done differently. Pieces have moved around a little bit, sure, but it was really fluid anyway, so I didn't feel like anybody was stuck in a rigid position. Pitti and Barco were rotating a lot. So, you weren't lacking for players getting forward. There's not an obvious solution there. You had a group on the field to win it. You created the opportunities to win it, and you didn't win it.
Swixter, going back to Michael Bradley, says that Michael Bradley wins the Luis Suarez Man of the Match award on the back of the double jeopardy rule. Had Bradley pulled PT down outside the box as he started to. It's a dog so red instead of a PK and a yellow. Theme of tonight. The end justifies the means. Michael Bradley won the game for Toronto FC.
Yeah, ultimately he did. Defensively very good. And was he beaten sometimes? Yeah. Welcome to the soccer. But he led his team to a win. He has that armband for a reason. He makes a lot of money for a reason. Toronto, I think, will ultimately keep him. And the wild thing is, per the reports from Sam Stajkal and Paul Tenorio, if Toronto wins MLS Cup, the trigger in his option is automatic for a $6.5 million contract for next season. It's a crazy option trigger, but it's there. So he's got a lot to play for next Sunday. That's a lot of money to make if he wins this match. It's a lucrative day for Michael Bradley, but he was really good. And Swixter's right. If that foul happens outside, and again, going back to Kelly's comment to Parkhurst about it, if it happens outside, it's not a penalty. I'm assuming from what Kelly said that he's thinking dog-so, and he would go red. We've seen it with other situations throughout the years. I remember the Brad Kazan tackle outside the box where if that happens inside the box, it's a penalty. It's not a red. But it happened outside, so it was a red, not a penalty. And you kind of wonder which one you'd rather take in the situation. You know, if Bradley's red carded in that match last night, either way, I don't see any way Toronto wins it.
No.
Because they're already 1-0 down, even if the penalty is missed. I don't think they have enough to find a way to win. So I don't know what they would have done. That's an interesting one for Greg Vanney. I don't know what move they would have made, because they would have had to bring somebody in Bradley's role, I would think. I don't know where the sacrifice would have been. You're not going to pull Pozuelo. Maybe it would have been Endo, and you would have kept playing the way you did until you had to start really just going for it 10 on 11. But yeah, a red card would have ended the game, and didn't happen.
GOWW17. Say what you will, but Zlatan and Vela are also sitting this championship match out. Ho-hum, same teams 3 out of 4 years. Did we borrow script writers from the EPL at Men in Blazers? Sour muscadines, I suppose.
Yeah, it's not the same. I mean, it's not that Seattle and Toronto have dominated the last 4 years, but they have in the postseason. Seattle's consistency has been really impressive. Toronto did not make the postseason last year, but they did make the CONCACAF Champions League final, which, you know, can't be overlooked as a big accomplishment. They haven't been the dominant teams like we've seen in the EPL. They haven't been Manchester City, Liverpool running away from everybody, so I'll push that to the side. But yeah, I mean, that's the conversation that you're going to have here is your big 3 goal scorers in the league this season, Vela, Zlatan, Joseph, not in MLS Cup. And it's a team led by Raul Ruidiaz and Nico Ladero going up against a team led by Alejandro Pozuelo and Michael Bradley. And we'll see about if 10 days is enough for Josie Altidore to be back in and contribute, because I do think Toronto's a better team with Josie Altidore in it. I think they're a much more versatile team, but they've been able to find a way to keep surviving, and that's what it's felt like for Toronto. It's been a kind of a miraculous run for them to get to this point, and you have to give Greg Vanney a lot of credit, and more than anything, you got to give those players a lot of credit for keeping alive in these matches. Like in New York, they didn't create a bunch of chances. They created 6. They scored their goals off of mistakes. Last night, they didn't create a bunch of chances. I'll pull up the number in a second. I think it was less than 6. I think it was 4. But they converted into huge moments with spectacular goals. Sometimes that's enough. When you pair it up with a defense that you're getting these performances out of Laurent Simon. You're getting these performances out of Chris Mavinga. Quentin Westberg has been big in the last 2 games. It's enough, and you're surviving, and you're moving along. You're not dominant, but you got a chance to win the trophy at the end.
Ricky Ricardo, I know this is nowhere near important as the game, but I remember back in early 2018 when the King Peach came out and the immediate undeserved hate it got. But we turned that kid into a staple of consistency, and I will miss it. # King Peach forever.
Yeah, I will too. I grew to like it. I still don't like the numbers on it because they were really hard to read. But luckily, you know, you see this team day in and day out. You know who the players are pretty quickly. That would be the one change I would have made to it, would have been to figure out a way for the numbers to be more easily identifiable from a distance. It's the broadcaster's curse, I guess. But yeah, I ultimately ended up really liking it, and it kind of did give you a warm feeling when you saw the team come out in it. Maybe because that's what they won the Eastern Conference Championship in last year and had some big moments in. So it served a great purpose, but we will see a new secondary kit next year. I know there's some reports out there that we will see new primary kits. I think that might be a little overhyped. It is going to be MLS year 25 next year, and I'm sure there will be
silver piping somewhere.
I don't know about that, but there'll be something on the kit if there's a patch or something or other to recognize that on the league side, because you see that in every league. I don't know if it will be a different design to the kit. I could easily see a situation where it's the same kit. I don't even think about a silver piping. I'm thinking like a patch. I'm thinking like something stitched on, something like that to commemorate the 2020 kit that is year 25 of MLS. So be on the lookout. That stuff will all start to come out, and there will be lots of merchandise available. I've seen the leaks for the secondary kit. I have no confirmation on if that's true or not, but it looks like, according to the leaks, that the peach will turn to gold is what you're looking at. So not a huge dramatic change. And I do like the idea of incorporating more gold into the kits. I'm cool with that.
G-Rod says Joseph had a bad postseason and cost us the finals. If he was hurt, he should have let PT take the penalty.
That's one. I mean, I don't know if the injury affected his penalty. It was not a great penalty. It wasn't a bad penalty. It was a good save from Westberg, not a shocking save. It's good enough. It's on goal. It's not good enough to beat Westberg, and he guessed it the right way. If he guesses the other way, it's a goal, and you're up 2-0. It's a different conversation. Pitti could have taken the penalty. Pitti, a year ago to the day, took the penalty that put River Plate into the Copa Libertadores final. He took that penalty in Brazil in stoppage time, and that was enough for River Plate to advance. So he's got those in him. Ezequiel Barco's got penalties in him. In the past, it had been kind of a penalty by committee type of approach. Miguel Almiron took some until Joseph became so strong and so consistent on penalties. He missed 3 this year. That's a little bit of a big number. There's others who missed more, but that's one that, that sticks out a little bit. And I'm sure that's something that will be a conversation going forward. Is it going to be automatic going forward now that Joseph takes the penalty? Or will it be more about the feeling of the day, or if there's any injury issues or anything like that? What was the first line there in the tweet?
Joseph had a bad postseason and cost us the finals.
I'm not going to say cost us the finals. I think that's incredibly harsh, because you're not even anywhere near this thing if you don't have Joseph in this group. So that does have to factor in. He did not have a good postseason. That part is accurate. And before this injury, because I want to make it clear, I think some people have lumped the San Jose injury into this. There's no indication that one had anything to do with the other. I don't think he was playing the whole postseason injured. I think, according to Frank, he was injured on Monday, and it affected this game. He was not as good in the postseason as he was in the regular season. That's a fact. And there were opportunities in the first 2 games that he could have put away and made games a little more comfortable. He didn't. Last night, he missed opportunities, and it comes back to bite you in this. But I'm not going to put it on him that he cost the team that. You're not there without him. And there's not a lot of situations in Joseph's time in Atlanta and Joseph's career here that you could say he let the team down. I don't think you get to start saying it, the first or second time that you're going to have that conversation. I think that's harsh to go to. I think he's delivered so many times that you can't deliver every single time as a forward. It's why it's so hard to do what Joseph's done over 3 years. It's why it's so hard to have the year that Carlos Vela did, the year that Zlatan did. It doesn't happen every year. So, do you come up short sometimes? Yeah. I feel differently about Joseph's postseason than I do about Vela's performance on Wednesday or on Tuesday, because I feel like Vela disappeared, and even Joseph not at 100%. I don't feel like he disappeared. He stepped up and took the penalty because that's his role in this team. He kept trying to find a goal in this, even though he couldn't. I'll take that. That's why I don't feel let down by his performance.
Jordan Soreski overnight had a thought from 30,000 feet over Iceland en route to Finland. Atlanta United still had a successful season as we won 2 trophies. This and the first at MLS Cup playoffs team to win a Campeones Cup over a Mexican club. Very excited for at the champions. Hashtag overreaction Thursday.
Yeah, I'm excited for Champions League too. I'm hopeful that now that you've had a run in it, that you kind of understand the challenges. I hope you get a better draw too. I mean, that's something that did get lost in the shuffle as the year went on. You were drawn up against the eventual winners in the quarterfinal. If you have a different draw, you could have advanced to the semis. You could have advanced to the final. This is a team that I do believe, this is a club that I do believe can win the CONCACAF Champions League. I think it's a club that has an aspiration that is on par with the top teams in Mexico. And that's tournament play. The draw plays into it. Your performances in these individual games, just like in the MLS Cup postseason. Tournament play is not always about the best overall team. I don't think Atlanta United's the best overall team in the hemisphere yet. They have to prove that, but I think they can compete for that title. And I think they will next year. MLS Cup playoff play, the 90-minute format now, the single-game knockout, I think it's been driven home in NYC losing to Toronto, in Atlanta losing to Toronto, in LAFC losing to Seattle. How difficult it can be. Just because you had a great regular season does not mean that you're going to advance. Yeah, you had home field advantage. That doesn't guarantee anything either. A 90-minute format invites chaos. It invites games like these we've seen. I don't think Seattle bunkered until the end, but they were defensive. Toronto, defensive in both games, New York and this one, and they get through. It wasn't as open as maybe it would have been over 180 minutes. There's no guarantee that's the case either. I've always felt like if you have 180 minutes, if you play a best of 7, if you do the things that you see in other sports, the better team has a better chance of winning. I know that people will tell you that home field advantage is more meaningful and you'd rather have the one game at home than the 2 matches. I think if you have more time, the better team wins more often. That's why I'm not a fan of the format. I don't think it's going to change, though. I think they got everything they wanted to get out of it.
Katie Weaver, so much had aligned for Atlanta United to have another memorable run, but in the end, like LAFC the night before, had an off night from the star striker and ultimately got MLS'd by a wily TFC who did what it took to survive and advance. Hashtag still a good season. Hashtag thank you, Cap.
Yeah, you got to give credit to Toronto. I mean, they knew what they could do. They also knew what they couldn't do, and they didn't get caught. Did they give up chances? Yeah, they did because they were limited, and Atlanta's really good. But they were able to survive it, and then they took advantage of the couple of decent chances they had. They weren't even really good chances, the decent ones. They did enough. That's soccer. It's not even MLS. I think it's soccer. When it comes to Parkhurst, it hit me a couple times after the match, after the final whistle, as you know, you're kind of looking at everything unfold on the field, and you're also seeing some of the shots that they're getting on the broadcast. And Parkhurst, you know, in his training kit after he'd come out of the match, you had to go for it after the goal. Parkhurst is the one who gets subbed out. It's just throw everything forward and see if you can find one. But seeing him after the match, a little stunned, walking around, I mean, as I said at the beginning, you know going into these moments, you know it could be over at the end of the night. You don't plan for it to be. It's not, you know, a season where you're not making the playoffs. You know game 34 that's it. You know you're going to say your goodbyes afterwards. You know all that. It's done. In a playoff situation, you know it could be, but you don't know that it is. And it hits you in a kind of sudden way when that final whistle goes that, yeah, that's it. And you take that and you add it on to the end of your career as a professional player, and it hits you even more. I mean, I think you could hear it in his voice in the post-match comments. I think you could see it on his face. He thought there was going to be another 90 minutes at least in it coming in. I mean, I think you had to. Atlanta was the favorite. You thought that you would find a way because you have so many times. You've done it so many times at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but not last night. And it's a hard way to go out. It doesn't diminish anything about definitely not the career, but the season either, because Michael Parkhurst did everything that this team needed him to do in 2019, whether that was playing on the outside as an outside back, whether that was not playing and training and keeping this team going in everything off the field, and then coming back into the team at the end in a big pressure situation with Miles Robinson out, delivering in a big way, suffering a very painful injury to the point that I thought he was going to pass out walking off the field. And then somehow finding your way back to the field in a semifinal game, in a conference final game. Finding your way back to the field and putting on the performance that he did. Guy is one of the toughest players I've ever seen and one of the smartest players I've ever seen. And just one of the best guys in the game that American soccer will see. And I know he will be celebrated as such in Atlanta, and I hope that in the national conversation that he is celebrated for an amazing career. And that's what was kind of sad about this year across the board was, you know, a lot of different places had that kind of story. Real Salt Lake, I mean, you say goodbye to Nick Raimondo and the career that he had. Colorado, he wasn't there for a long time, but Tim Howard, I mean, one of the best American professionals of all time. DeMarcus Beasley in Houston, who was there for a good bit and gave them everything, gave the U.S. national team everything. And Chad Marshall before the season even ended. And Chad Marshall, I would like to think that Seattle will do everything possible to include him in things for the MLS Cup final. I mean, his impact has been felt with that group, even, you know, as he had to retire due to injuries. But that's another one that's very similar to Parkhurst, and that he didn't get his full due that he should have as a player. He's been that good in his career, and he didn't even get to finish it on the field. And he's going to watch his group, because they're still his group, play in an MLS Cup final, and he knows he can't play a part in it. It's sad when you see these legends, you know, call it a day. Atlanta was very lucky to have Michael Parkhurst for their first captain, and very lucky that he chose to come to Atlanta and take a chance on joining a new team, and you never know what it can be. And I think Parkhurst and other players have talked about it. Like, you know, he had never, thinking back in his career, he had never played for a manager like Tata Martino. He'd never played in a style like that. It's a little bit of a culture shock, but man, he was a rock. And this team isn't what it is without Michael Parkhurst. And now that's a huge hole to replace. Not as much on the field, but as off and in the locker room. And that's going to be a very important task for Carlos Bocanegra and Frank de Boer.
Kyle Kessler says it was a tough way to end the season, but if you told me that we'd finish second in the East, win the USOC, and beat Club America, I would have taken it in a heartbeat. It's going to be a very interesting offseason, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I would have said that before the season. I would have said that in the summer. I would have said that when the playoffs started. I would have said that before the Seattle LAFC match started. I still will say that, although the opportunity that presented itself after Seattle pulled the upset, that's why it hurts a little bit more than I thought it would. Because, man, you don't want to take anything for granted, because you can't in this game, but you get a chance to win at home and then get the final at home. That's where it feels like an opportunity lost. But ultimately, yes, you look at this season as a whole, and you have to be happy about the way it went. I think it's very hard to say the 2019 season was anything other than a success.
Daniel Forty says he can't sleep. Somebody thought swirling about what could or might have been. We can't count this season as a loss by any circumstances due to all the team went through. But why does this hurt so much more than the loss to Columbus in 2017? Hashtag overreaction Thursday insomnia.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt too. It was kind of slow getting out of the bins last night for me. We stayed on a little bit longer on the full-time report as kind of put a wrap on everything, and then did Southern Fried Soccer with Doug Robertson. And go check out his Doug Robertson AJC on Twitter and wherever you find your podcasts. Go check that out. We talked about things from the stadium as well. And it was just kind of like taking my time, getting out of there and driving home and taking a couple extra turns around the block and, just not like tired, just like drained, like completely and utterly drained, but not able to sleep. The standard post-match, late night post-match anyway, Yoo-Hoo and Mounds Bar was not enough to put me to sleep straight away. The Yoo-Hoo didn't taste as good as it usually does after a win.
Nope.
It's one of those things. But stayed up for a pretty good while. I think I finally crashed sometime 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then up early this morning to talk to John and Hugh over at 92.9, and then talk to all of you. So I'm on fumes at the moment.
Let's see. Jason Heinley had and this was early this morning, so it looks like Jason might have gotten a little more sleep than we did. He goes, WTF, what a disappointing end to a very good season. End of the game, I said, nothing Atlanta United until next season starts. This morning, I'm anxious waiting on the show.
Yeah, that's what I always say to people is that, you think like, the season's over. All right, well, get away from it for a while. No, it's not how it goes. The silly season is underway. The rumors are flowing all over the place, not just in Atlanta, and they will. And, you're a few weeks away from an expansion draft. You're, a few days away from option announcements and contract announcements, and that really starts the off season with all of the potential changes around the league. Atlanta's not the only team in this situation. Everybody is. So it's going to stay very, very busy. There will be some lulls in it, and obviously there will be some different flows to things without matches going on, but yeah, you've got all of the roster stuff that will happen between now and the end of the year. And then you've got the window opening up, and then it'll be early in January when training camp starts. Because if the season calendar is what we're expecting and games start a few weeks earlier, so that's going to put you into February for the season starting, the preseason training would start a little earlier, which would put you pretty close to the 1st of January. And for CONCACAF Champions League teams, I would assume that their training will start as close to January 1 as you can get. And I don't know what kinds of rules are in the current CBA, and I don't know if the plan is to operate under the current CBA, if both sides feel like there's been progress. I don't think there will be a work stoppage. I really don't. I don't think either side gains from it. I think they would work together to start the season on time, start preseason training on time, all of those things, because with CONCACAF coming up, like, you don't want to have bad performances there. You want to give your teams every opportunity to be successful, and that's going to mean starting camp on time and as early as possible. So it could be pretty early in January that you're going to see Atlanta United back on the field and training. That's not that far away.
Round of 16 for CONCACAF Champions League is somewhere between February 18th and 20th, and the second leg is a week later. And if math is correct, there's a points seeding system where Atlanta United is concerned. They would be in pot 1 as one of the USA sides, and they, depending on the winner, would either be ranked 5th or 6th out of the 8 teams in the first pot.
Yeah, the ranking doesn't matter. It's just which pot you go into. So pot 1, you will get a better draw than if you were bumped over to pot 2. So that's the main thing here. Beyond that, it's the luck of the draw.
Let's see. We got a lot of folks. Daniel Price has had multiple thoughts. One as he was leaving the building last night, and then this one this morning before the show started. He says, I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I'm just sad. Sad like I lost a loved one. I couldn't take my eyes off the pitch last night. It was too hard to say goodbye. I want to scream, but I can't find my voice. It was a good season. Don't get me wrong. I'm just sad.
Yeah, that's about how I felt. I definitely lingered a bit because, it's the last time we'll be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium for probably 3 months, maybe a little bit more, just depending on how the schedule works out.
Yeah,
so,
about right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool place to be. It's a fun place to be. For a game day, there's no place I'd rather be. It's a special place. And I thought the crowd really brought it last night. I thought they did the best that they could, especially after the second goal. I felt like, there was a lull after the penalty miss, which is completely and utterly understandable. I think it was for everybody in the building, fans, players, staff, all of us included. But the crowd trying to drive this team forward after Toronto took the lead, the fans left it just like the players did. I don't feel like there's anybody who can look back and say that they could have done more from an effort perspective. Quality, especially quality in the final third, different conversation. But effort, I don't think there's anybody you can fault.
Under the weather, a couple of different thoughts. Zero complaints on the way Atlanta played or Frank's decisions for me. After watching the playback, under the weather thinks it's a clear dog so red on Bradley. The other defenders on the other side of Joseph has no chance to make a play, and the foul's clearly up high. It changes the game.
Yeah, it's not about the defender making the play right then. It's about, can they deny the obvious goal-scoring opportunity? And my gut reaction was that they were close enough, especially when you factor in how early in the match it was. I know by the letter of the law that's not how it's supposed to be called, but we all know that's how it gets called. It's a different conversation when it's early in the match versus later in the match. It's a different conversation if it's regular season versus playoffs. Those things are the unwritten rules. We know that. We know that thing is true. I still go back to the explanation because the explanation changes it for me. The explanation would make you think that the defender is not close enough, and the explanation would make you think that the justification is that it was a play on the ball, not a grab, as to why there wasn't dog so red here. And if that's the case, then I completely disagree because I just don't think there was a play on the ball.
Drew Gano says, Open Cup winners, Campeones Cup winners, second in the East, deep run into the playoffs. Don't let anyone tell you Atlanta United didn't have a successful season. Immensely proud of our 5 stripes, #on par reaction Thursday.
Yeah, it's a lot of the same conversation we had yesterday about LAFC. I mean, I think it's different because you have 2 trophies versus 1, but both teams had successful seasons. They just aren't going to end up with the most successful season in 2019 because I think the way this league is constructed, the champion's the champion, and the champion is the MLS Cup winner. So neither team won the trophy that they wanted to win, but they did win trophies, and that makes it a successful season. Go read the piece that I quote tweeted before we got started from the Players Tribune, the international version, and Marcelo of Real Madrid. First, it's just an amazing read. I mean, Marcelo is like just completely unfiltered as to what it's like to do what he does and what it's like to be a professional player and how it feels. But he talks about how, you have a season where you win trophies. Yeah, you're going to feel like it's successful. If you don't win all the trophies, then there's always going to be room for improvement. And in a season where you don't win anything, it's a huge, complete disappointment. And Real Madrid is a club that's expected to win trophies. And it's a club that's expected to win Champions Leagues. And they did 3 times in a row. And that's a big freaking deal. Atlanta United in this continent is expected to win trophies. In this league, they're expected to win trophies. They've won 3 in the last 2 years. It's pretty successful in anybody's book. But this year, it was not as successful as it could have been, and especially how it felt like it could have been with the way things fell for you, in the sense that you could have hosted MLS Cup, and at home, you feel like you're an overwhelming favorite. And you should feel that way, because generally you are. You've lost 7 matches at Mercedes-Benz Stadium since it opened. It's not very many. Not very many. This has been a very good team in that building, and you would feel like you would have a chance to win any game that you play in it. So, it's a successful year. It's not as successful as it could have been, and that's going to be what sticks with you a little bit, the way it ended.
John Murray says his overreaction Thursday is, wow, what a ride. G-Rod came back and continued his thoughts for the morning. He said, this moment is what still stings the most. I truly thought the game was over, referring to the penalty. Had 100% confidence in Joseph. You'd think after the Super Bowl I'd learn I feel sick after dominating the game.
Yeah, it's the nature of sports sometimes. You know, it just kicks you in the gut when you think, man, you get that early goal. It's an amazing ball from Barco to Pitti on the delayed run. Great composure from him to draw the defenders to him and lay it off for Gressel. It's an unbelievable start. Then it's like, okay, even better. You get a penalty. Joseph's going to take it. All is well in the world. And when that penalty doesn't find the back of the net, then it's like, oh, crap. What now? Then Benazet scores the goal he does, and it's just, here we go. Here we go. It's a match that it didn't look like it was going to be a few minutes ago. The door was opened, and Toronto was the one who ended up shutting it at the end of the night.
Kevin from Charlotte wasn't upset with the result. The team played well, went down fighting. Making it to this point was still an achievement, but also Joseph has to make that penalty. We rightfully praise him, but also have to acknowledge he wasn't up to his own standards in the playoff run.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's what I hope people are understanding what I'm saying here about this. Like, yeah, he was not what he's been in the postseason. But I think people also take it too far, and I saw a few tweets, and I'm going to assume that they were out of pure emotion afterwards, like questioning Joseph and things. Like, that's happened before, and I think it's utterly foolish. You have a star that carries you because they're that good, and he's carried this team because he's that good, and you're always going to look for him in those moments because he typically delivers. When he doesn't, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden he's a bad player. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden he's not what he was before. No. He's shown you who he is. Until he starts having performances like this on a regular basis, then it's a different conversation. And he hasn't. So, yeah, he'll tell you the same thing. Like, he's got to convert in that moment. That's who you are in this team. That's your role. That's the pressure that you put on yourself. It's the pressure that you willingly accept, and you're expected to deliver, and he didn't. And that's going to stick with him until they play again.
Nathan Pugh says, calls do and do not happen, e.g. the Garcia ghost goal, parenthesis, you'll never walk alone, closed parenthesis. Rudy being offsides, infield fly rule not being infield. Bowman held Roddy. Lindelof fouled Origi. Atlanta had every chance to win the match. Tough to go out, but look forward to a fuller offseason in the CCL next season.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I completely disagree with the lack of a call on the tackle from Morrow on Nagbe. I do think it had an impact on the goal that ends up being the winner. I disagree with what Kelly said about why he didn't go red card to Bradley. I thought it was different. Maybe he probably should have explained it that way if that's the way he wanted to go, because it's a little bit harder to argue. But anyway, yeah, I disagree with both of those. They didn't cost Atlanta the game. The red card would have changed it completely. I think that was a much more wishful thinking situation, although his explanation opens the door to stronger wishes. But the tackle on the Nagby one, I don't like that call at all. I don't like that situation at all. But, yeah, calls get missed. Things happen in games. Atlanta, even with those, still had the opportunities to win this game and had a lot of them. Couldn't find it. Toronto didn't have many opportunities at all, and they found it. So the referees did not cost Atlanta United the game. Did they have an impact in a couple moments? Yes, they 100% did, as they always do. But Atlanta still had plenty to win this game. I mean, Frank DeBoer said it. If we play this game 30 times, we will win 27, tie 2, and maybe lose 1. The one came today when nobody wanted it to happen. That's the reality of the game. You get those games where you're going to win it every time but that one. You're going to get games where you could play for 5-6 hours and you're not going to find another goal. That's kind of how it felt last night at the worst time possible.
Brandon Felder, I'm proud the team went out playing and executing their brand. LAFC didn't show much fight. We did. I'd rather go out looking back, saying it took an incredible effort from the opponent. Looking forward, time to move on from Tito and focus on Gressel and Larry.
Yeah, we'll get to the individual part in a second. I thought Atlanta United played its game last night, and I thought they executed well until the final third. And you're not going to have regrets for that. One question that somebody had for Frank afterwards was about why waiting until the 80th minute to send Tito in. I've seen a lot of comments about subs, and I kind of gave you my thoughts earlier on. I don't think there was an obvious sub. I think the only subs you're going to make at that point were because of tired legs, and it didn't look like there were any tired legs. You're going to leave Joseph on the field until you can't anymore. I'm sorry, it's just how it is. The question about why did you wait to Frank, he said, did you watch the game? Who was controlling the game? Us. I didn't have any reason to change. I agree. The change he made was because he had to change because you had fallen behind 2-1 at that point. And you sacrifice a center back and you bring on Tito Villalba, and Tito was poor. And there were a lot of times this season that Tito was not the Tito we had seen in previous years. He's mentioned it with injuries. He's mentioned that he hasn't felt right and he hasn't recovered. He hasn't looked himself. He came on in the New England playoff match and gave you a change in that game at a time when you needed it. Still wasn't sharp, still wasn't good, but his presence was enough in that one to have an impact. Last night, you needed him to be sharp in moments, and he just wasn't. And it was sad to see because Tito was the first name signing here, and he's a player that I will always have just such an appreciation for because of what he gave you in 2017 and 2018 with the goals against Orlando, the goal in San Jose, the goal against the Red Bulls in the postseason, the just appearance of the way that he played. I mean, I always compared it to you would see Miguel Almiron run and it looked like he was gliding. It was so effortless, the speed he had. Whereas you would see Tito with about the same speed. And Tito looked like his arms were going to come flying off of his shoulders because they were pumping so hard. And
Yep.
Like extremities are just going all over the place because of it. And it looked like a ton of effort. And he always gave you that. And he was such an unpredictable player in a lot of moments for Atlanta United when they needed it. So the fact that the last memories we might have of Tito Villalba are negative because of poor performance, that sucks. I think a change for him will probably do him good. And I think at the numbers you're talking about for him, the performance in 2019 hasn't been up to that standard. So don't know his contract situation. He's one that I don't think it's been talked about in terms of, is it an option? Is he under contract for another year? Anything like that. I have not heard any updates on that. And I think a lot of people, and this is something that I think we're going to have to get used to here, people have said, like, oh, it's time for him to go. It's time for him to go. Well, somebody's got to take him. And it's not to say that he's not a player that can't play other places. absolutely think Tito Villalba can play a lot of different places. But coming off the year he had, you're not going to have as much demand. And if he's under contract, he's under contract. Can you find a move? Potentially. But there's no guarantees of that. And that's going to be part of the story of this offseason is you have guys who are out of contract. You have guys that have options. You have decisions to make in those situations. But you also have guys who are under contract that for whatever reason, it might be the right time to move them. It might be the situation where they want to be moved. But that means you've got to find a destination and you've got to find a deal that makes sense. And that's not always easy. So that will play into this story as well.
Shiva says, I'm more sad this morning than disappointed. I love this team so much that seeing them so sad after such a fight made me sad. I don't like this playoff format. Toronto did not really play, in my opinion. They were organized and packed defensively, took their chances. It was hard to break them down, and that's what a one-off game can do, and a one-off game can do that to you.
Yeah, Toronto played. I give Greg Vanney a lot of credit for the tactics because it wasn't just bunker, play 10 guys behind the ball, and that's it. There was a strategy to it. Bradley, I thought, was really good in picking the right moments in his positioning as the night went on. Pozuelo was what he was. I mean, I thought he was better when they brought on Mullins, and it's something that I do think Vanney will have to consider in the final if Josie Altidore is not available, because I feel like it's easier for Pozuelo to impact the match in one like this where you're going to defend a lot if he is out wide as opposed to being the false nine when he's just not seeing the ball. He feels like he's wasted a little bit there. Something that I wonder if Toronto looks at that for the final. Tactically, they did what they had to do. I don't think they could have come in and tried to open up and play in an expansive way and find a result. There's no way they're finding it. They would have been exposed. So it's not Toronto's job to come in and entertain. And in the postseason, it's a very different conversation than the regular season in that regard. But on the road, you have no responsibility to do that. In the postseason, you have zero responsibility to do it. Your job is to survive. And they did.
All right, let's see what else we have here. Chris Hutchison. Knowing that Joseph was hurt and after seeing that very poorly struck penalty shot, I believe Frank DeBoer made a tactical mistake by not substituting for him. It was obvious he wasn't anywhere near 100% last night.
It's easy to say after the fact. I don't think anybody was saying that during the match. If they were, full credit to them. I wasn't saying that. We weren't saying that calling the match. Did he miss chances, and were we talking about that? 100%. But he did not look less than 100% physically to the naked eye. After you hear about the injury, it's different. And I don't judge it however you want on the penalty. You put it on goal, you're not missing. I know there's been a lot of back and forth about miss and save and which is which, and is everything a miss if it doesn't find the back of the net. I do think there's a difference between missing the goal entirely and being saved. I also think there's a difference between missing the goal narrowly, wide, or high, and missing it badly. There's a difference there, too. Joseph did not strike a great penalty. Westberg made a good save. That's where I would put it. So I would rather, and maybe it's me being biased because of everything Joseph has given to this team, I would rather go down with Joseph less than 100% on the field, believing that he's going to find a goal to take you to extra time. I'd rather go down that way than sub him in the halftime or 60th minute, or I don't know where you would have subbed him. Subbing him or not playing him and then wondering if less than 100% Joseph would have made the difference. You didn't have an obvious person to replace him with. Because we all know Tito Villalba has not been strong in the last couple months. I mean, the NYC opportunity for him was the one that he could have impacted that game in a huge way, and he did not get it done. After that, I lost a little bit of faith in what he could bring. If it had been him starting instead of Joseph, you would have had a very different feeling about this match. If it had been Brandon Vasquez starting in place of Joseph, there would have been a very different feeling about this match. If it had been either one of them subbing in for Joseph, there would have been a very different feeling about this match. He was good enough to go, and I think you have to go with a player that's done that for you in his time there. You don't want to leave that. You don't want to leave that bullet in the chamber. You know, you've got to go for that.
Let's see. Elsewhere on the board, Daniel Price is asking if Parkey has to retire. Can he keep going? He says this SDH isn't helping his state of mind.
Sorry. I mean, he doesn't have to, but he is, and it's probably time. It's just an amazing career, and he's going to be a big loss. I think as much for the off the field side as the on the field in this past year, it's going to be a big loss, and that's one of the questions coming in to 2020 is who will the captain be? You know, you feel if you bring everybody else in the defense back, you feel like you have a good defense. But who will the captain be? Because that's an important thing. You know, if you bring Jeff Larentowicz back, I think that's an obvious choice. I'm good with that. But is he going to play 90 minutes week in, week out if he comes back another year? Honestly, the way he finished, there's no reason to think that he can't.
Right.
I thought he was outstanding down the road for this team, but there's always questions because Father Time does catch up to you every single
undefeated.
time. Yeah, you just don't know when he's coming.
Alex Krupp. One good thing that came from 28-3, I guess, is that as bad as I feel now, it could always be worse. Mostly just feel gutted for the players.
This is true. Yes, it was not that. It was not good, but it was not that. It was a night where you went down swinging. You just weren't connecting in the way you normally do. I'll take that, ultimately. I'll take that as opposed to how LAFC and NYC went down. I'll take that as opposed to how you've seen other teams lose in an upset fashion where you felt like they weren't good enough on the night. Atlanta was in the sense that they created the chances, and they were in the sense that they played their game. The quality wasn't good enough on the night. I'll take going out on your shield like that.
HLUTD fan number one. For me, I'm damn proud, capital D, capital P, of how our team evolved from CCL to midseason to last night. When you look at the week-to-week graphic and how we ascended to the top, it's a great illustration of how far they came. It was one heck of a journey. 2 cups to add to last year.
Damn Skippy, capital D, capital S.
Alex comes back in and asks, what does this say about home field advantage in single elimination playoffs? NYC, LA, Atlanta all lose at home. Just a statistical anomaly or something more?
It's not all it's cracked up to be because it's a 90-minute game, and in a 90-minute situation, teams, I think, in an underdog situation like this are going to come in and be more defensive. And that can be enough in these moments. So a lot of the talk about going to this format was that it rewards the regular season and home field advantage is worth it, worth eliminating the 2 legs. I've never felt that way. I've always felt like the better team wins over 180 minutes. So I would rather have the 180 minutes. I think it creates a better playoff system, but maybe this will open some eyes to that. I don't know. Maybe it is an anomaly. Maybe I'm wrong that it is better for the better seeds and it's a better reward for the regular season to have it this way. I don't think it is. I think it invites too much chaos.
Dan Murphy's massively disappointed with the game last night, especially after things breaking to be able to host MLS Cup. It's always sad when the season ends, but this feels like the end of an era. Parkey gone? Perhaps Tito, maybe Gressel. Thanks, Berhalter. Hashtag Overreaction Thursday.
Yeah, the thanks Berhalter part will definitely be part of it, too. That's going to be a footnote at the end of all this. It kind of does. I mean, I think it's even more of a credit to the front office and to DeBoer that it didn't feel like the end of the era at the end of last season when Tata Martino left and you won the championship. It did feel like it continued. That's hard to do. That's very, very hard to do. I mean, teams have eras and chapters, and you see what's happening at Tottenham this year. And Mauricio Pochettino's talked about it a lot this season. It felt like last year getting to the Champions League final and where things were with contracts and players and how many years people had been at the club, it felt like the end of a chapter last year. And this year they tried to keep that chapter open. And you see what's happening. It's hard. It's hard to do that. Atlanta keeping the chapter open another year, winning 2 trophies and getting to an Eastern Conference final and finishing 3rd overall in the league. That's pretty freaking good. But now, can you keep it open another year with the same group completely and just roll it out again? It's harder to do going another time. I think you'll see more change than we've seen for Atlanta United in the club's history. I think you have to because of the nature of the contracts and the longer-term contracts that were signed at the beginning. I think you have to see more change in this offseason, and I think you probably need to as well.
KFC, we came up just short. Got to finish the chances. Love the entertainment the club offers. Maybe don't give away our defense's worst fears for Halloween before the game. The keeper's not a cat fan. Pogba isn't either. TFC must have been hissing all night. 2020, we ready.
That video was hilarious. I was cracking up at the reactions to the cat. It was there for you, and that's what sucks more than anything. I don't know which is better, honestly. You know, if you go out 2-0 and the opponent just beats you, if you make it and you have to go on the road, like I don't know. It sucks because I feel like the team was good enough to win last night, and they ultimately did not. I feel like the opportunity opened up for them to win MLS Cup again, and they ultimately did not. And that sucks. I guess there's probably not a way for you to lose at the stage and for it not to suck. It sucks.
I feel great about losing this way.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways you feel worse about losing at this stage.
Yeah, like if you're if you were the baseball team and at their home finale.
Yes. I mean, people argue that too. Like in those situations, would it have been better for Toronto to score 3 goals in the first 20 minutes and for it to be over, but you still have to finish it? You still have to play? I don't think so. I'd rather take this one where you had a shot to extend it and many opportunities to do so, and you just couldn't get it done. I'll take this than getting punched in the mouth and then kicked in the you-know-whats and then spun around and kicked in the backside and then probably some extra dirt kicked on top of you as well. I'll take this way instead of that way.
It's like being the one heel left in the ring with all of the megastars who get to do each of their finishers on you in sequence.
Yes, I don't want to be that guy.
Michael Head joined us late, dang work. Key stat.
Michael.
TFC 4 shots, all on goal, 50% ultimately productive. Atlanta United 18 shots, 5 on goal, and MSPK Atlanta United was incredibly wasteful. Oh, Joseph, so great for us over these 3 years, but a match to forget. Hashtag I hate sports.
Yeah, it's a match to forget. 5 shots on goal is not bad, by the way. I think sometimes when you see a bunch of shots but not a bunch on target, that it's kind of, oh, no, this is really, really bad. I'm going to pull it up real quick because I want to see what the usual averages were. So for the season, Atlanta averaged 15 shots and 5.2 on target. That's... that was 5th most shots on target per match of anybody in the league. The best was LAFC at 6.8. But, there were only Toronto at 5.2 as well. There was Portland at 5.3. There was NYC at 5.8. There was San Jose at 6. So 5 shots on target is better than your league average, and it's about what this team did all season. The efficiency from Toronto is impressive, not just because they had 4 and 4, but the fact that they made the most of the limited opportunities they had to get forward, because they didn't get forward a bunch. They didn't have many opportunities, and they were able to create, goal-scoring opportunities out of the 4 shots that they generated. They put them all on target. That's impressive. That's more impressive than it is disappointing that Atlanta only had 5 shots on target. When you look at the grand scheme of things, that's more than teams normally get.
Drew Gano, with the format the way it is it lost on anyone that the 2 teams that played quote-unquote negative soccer ended up in the Cup final asking for a friend? #Overreaction Thursday.
That was what I was afraid of. That was what I warned coming into it, because of the format lending itself to that. I don't think either was as negative as they could have been and maybe have been in previous situations. I think Seattle especially, taking it to 2-1, they were not negative at all. Toronto was different in that they were more negative from the start, had to weather an early storm, and never really opened up too much. I just don't think they could have without Josie Altidore. And we can talk about the Miles Robinson injury all day, but missing Josie Altidore has changed the way Toronto has to play. They don't have a lot of options. I mean, Frank mentioned it after the game that he talked to Greg Vanney, and Greg Vanney said that Atlanta deserved to win. I mean, ultimately they were the better team on the night, but Toronto did what they had to do. I don't think they had a lot of options. I just don't. And that's the way they had to play. Seattle didn't play negative until, honestly, they didn't really play negative until they got up 3-1. And pretty much anybody's going to do that at that point. They came in and took it to LAFC early. So I'll give both of them a pass. Now, I do think the final, it's going to be different than it was in the 2 in Toronto. I think Seattle's a better team right now than they were then. I think at home they're going to have that motivation to play. Toronto, the biggest question is going to be Josie and Omar Gonzalez. Omar Gonzalez is an upgrade over Laurent Simon in general, I believe, although Simon, he's another one who he did what he had to do last night. He had some rocky moments, but did enough. With Josie, Toronto can play a more open game, even though I do think they will be defend and counter. Without Josie on the road there against a very good Seattle attack, I think you're going to see a lot of what you saw last night. Toronto's going to have to be more defensive and just make the most of the few opportunities they get. But I do think Seattle will be far more open at home. And I don't think they were truly negative until they got 3 goals in LA.
Trying to see where we are here. Caleb Cook wants to talk about the substitution pattern. He says, what are your thoughts on having 2 subs left at the end of the game? Are you okay with that? Would you have done anything differently? And then he says he'll hang up and listen.
I'm okay with that. I think the Tito sub was the obvious one when you went down 2-1. I don't think there was another obvious sub outside of tired legs, and I didn't see any. Now, the Joseph injury, didn't know that at the time. I don't think you're pulling him there. Maybe you're pulling Pogba, but I don't think he was hurting you going forward at the end, and his size was helpful on set pieces. So I don't think there's an obvious sub. I don't. I guess the only other one that people really pointed to was there were a lot of calls for Barco to be subbed out. I don't think it was a problem. I don't think Barco gave you bad play. I don't think they found him a lot as the night went on. And that was a bit of a concern because I would have liked to have seen him on the ball more. I've said it all year, and I'm curious to see how this plays out. I would rather see the offense conducted through Barco than Pitti. And maybe it's because of the injuries to Barco and him not being that focal point all year long. I think when the team played through Barco, they were at their best. When Pitti was not getting, 80 touches, but getting 40 good ones in dangerous spots, I think the team was at their best. Last night, it felt like playing through Pitti more and playing through others more, and Barco not seeing enough of it. I don't think that was down to Barco playing poorly. I think it's just the way this team evolved in his absence a lot. And I hope that he can stay healthy, and I hope that he can end up being that conductor. But I don't, outside of maybe Merrim or Hindman for Barco, there's not an obvious sub to make, and the team was in control, and the team was creating chances. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Caleb says he's not saying that using the two subs would have magically sent the team to the Cup final. He's just saying I would have managed the game a bit differently.
Yeah, that's the thing is I think a lot of people have said that, but there's not a clear-cut answer. And that's what's hard about it. It's like you feel like, okay, yeah, you have to manage it differently. You have to do this. You have to do that. I don't think there's an easy answer as to what you would do, because I think the team that started was the strongest attacking group you could have fielded out of who you had available. So when you do that, there's not a game-changing sub to make off the bench. It is really only changing personnel, not changing the way you play or the way you can go forward, and you needed to keep going forward.
Alyssa Martin knows it's too early to talk about player moves, but I'll give my early thoughts. And she says she's okay with us losing Tito, Franco, and LGP. She's okay with losing those three. She's not okay losing Julian Darlington and Emerson Hindman. She's curious about offers for Barco and or Miles, but hope we can keep them for one more season.
I don't think the offers are going to be there for Miles yet. I think Miles, the money for him will come out of the Premier League, and he's not going to get a work permit yet. So unless a club's going to put in a huge offer because they feel like he can still develop and buy him and loan him, I don't see that happening. There hasn't been any real rumors of anything along those lines yet. There really hasn't been anything huge on Barco yet, out of the ordinary. I mean, I think with any talented South American player, things get said, but I haven't seen anything substantial. The Gressel situation, according to Doug Robertson, he's under an option for the team for next year, so the team can pick up his option, and he's in Atlanta again. I think he wants a longer-term deal, and understandably. I don't think there's any way that the team doesn't pick up the option. It'd be kind of foolish. I don't think you're going to let him walk. But I think you're going to have to figure out the long-term deal if you can. And if not, then everybody is an asset at that point, and everybody can be moved for other assets if they're not going to be here long-term. That's any player in the club. And that's any club. That's part of the game. That's part of the very difficult job that Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra have in crafting the roster, because you have to think immediate, but you also have to think long term. I think that's what it's going to come down to in so many of these situations. Darlington Nagbe, I don't know the situation. There has been different points in the season where there has been conversations about it. I know coming in, the conversation out of Portland was that he wanted more money. I don't think he signed a new deal from the last time that came up at the end of 2017. So you would think he's probably at the end of a deal or going into an option, and you're in the same boat about long-term versus short-term. I believe Leandro Gonzalez Perez is on a club option as well for next year, according to reports from Doug. So that's another one that it's a different conversation because of the money involved on the option, and it could be a different conversation in terms of a substantial option pickup, and that might change it. But he's another one, I think, probably looking for long-term security, and you have to make the decision on if you're going to give that to him here or if another club is going to give that to him elsewhere. I have not heard anything about Franco in terms of contract situations or concerns of moving, so that would be a new one. But we don't know everything about these situations. So we don't know everything about contract lengths and options and how easy it is and comfortable to pick them up and how uncomfortable it could be to pick them up. And we also don't know what the CBA is going to bring either. So it's a very difficult time in that regard. But we will start to get those answers somewhat quickly. Teams do not have to announce their option pickups for a little while. I'm going to double check the calendar now to make sure that I've got the right information for you. I'm pulling it up now. So here's your dates to keep in mind. November 11th through the 13th. Starts at 1 o'clock on the 11th. That's the day after MLS Cup. The trade window opens. So in the past, this has been the morning after MLS Cup. It's extended now. It will be an opportunity to sign players, trade players. Trade players who might have an option and you don't plan on picking it up or you don't plan on picking it up long term and bringing in other assets. It can be a time to just trade players and make upgrades. So that starts November 11th. Which is not far off. November 13th at 8 p.m. is when the trade window closes, the blackout period begins. November 14th is when clubs have to notify the league office in writing of players who have been extended a bona fide offer. Expansion draft is November 19th. November 21st is the deadline to exercise options. So you're looking at 3 weeks to make decisions on anybody who has an option on if you are going to exercise it. That's where it gets tricky, folks, because trade window is open before that. And in general, I think clubs have prepared for this to where, okay, we know we're going to pick up this option. We're not so sure I'm picking up this option. But that trade window gives you another element to where you can say, well, we're not so sure we're going to pick up this option, but we can trade this player to a club that is going to pick up the option. And that's a real possibility. I think you'll see those moves. After the option deadline of November 21st is when you start to get into waivers, re-entry drafts, and those things for players whose options were not picked up. Free agency opens 3 o'clock on November 25th. And there are players who will be eligible for free agency. Jeff Larentowicz would be eligible for that. Players who are out of contract and meet the requirements to be a free agent that right now are out of contract, option declined players, 28 years old, and have completed a minimum of 8 years in the league. Those are your requirements. And the list of free agents available will go out on November 22nd. So, it's felt like as the postseason's been going on, oh, this stuff's way off. Well, not anymore. Not anymore. Trade window opens November 11th. The afternoon after MLS Cup. So you're going to start to get a lot of things happening in November. It feels like it's been spread out a little bit. In previous years, it was just rapid fire of like boom, 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 boom. Things are going nuts. It's a little spread out this time, but not that much. So November is going to be a very busy month.
Chris Hutchison, I think, gets full credit this morning for posting his preview GIF of Seattle and Toronto, and it's the Simpsons GIF where the team on the left-hand side is just kind of passing among 3 guys and no one's moving. So that's.
I don't think it's going to be that bad. I don't, because I think Seattle's got a different mentality than they did going into Toronto. Now, will Toronto be as defensive as Seattle was in Toronto in 2016 and 2017? I don't think so. They weren't last night. I mean, Seattle in those games, it was bonker, 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 bonker. I don't think Toronto will be that. And I think Seattle will 100% go for it. They should, with Ladero and Ruidiaz at home. So it won't be what Atlanta LAFC could have been with two teams that definitely are more open than Seattle and Toronto, but I don't think it will be as bad as you might think based off the previous two finals between these two teams.
Couple more before we go. Michael Valverde has gone back and watched the replay of the match, and he went back and looked at the Bradley situation. He said the other defender was 12 yards away and behind the play. The only reason he got closer was the fact that Bradley pulled PT down, so Michael says dog so in red.
Depends on when you're calling the foul, first off, and if, it's not like there was a long, extended stretch of pulling. So if the foul is well, and let's also be real, because according to what was said to Michael Parkhurst by Alan Kelly, it wasn't about the pulling, it was about a trip, so it would be at the very end of it. The defender had closed that space a little bit. And also, I think the time in the match plays into it. I mean, you can say that it's not, but I think all of us who've been around the game understand that penalties are called differently in the 5th minute, the 10th minute versus the 85th or the 90th minute, and red cards are the same. It's a much higher bar early in a match, even higher bar early in a knockout match. I'm okay with the non-red to Bradley. I have a bigger problem with the non-call on the tackle on Nagbe. That was more egregious to me.
Yep. Daniel Price keeps replaying the match in his head over and over again. I keep thinking to myself, maybe I could have done something more. Maybe I could have cheered harder or louder, could have done something, anything. I think I'm going through those stages of grief.
Ugh. Don't keep replaying the match. I've not looked at the highlights in the highlight package. I've looked at those individual highlights a few times, but nah, it's not one to do that. I mean, because one, you're going to drive yourself crazy. Two, It kind of is what it is. I mean, it's just, in general, you weren't good enough in the final third. I mean, that's what it comes down to for me. And this team, over 3 years, has been very good in the final third. It hasn't been a long-standing issue of not scoring enough goals. And I've seen the comments about, I had someone tweet at me after my 92-9 appearance about it was a step back this year. I don't think so. I don't think it was a step forward. I think it was a step sideways. But a step back, I would disagree with that. And one of the reasons why they said it was a step back was because of you didn't score as much. And no, you didn't. But this is something that I do think will need to be discussed as the team is constructed for 2020. 2017, 2018, you had secondary goal scorers in Miguel Almiron and Tito Villalba. You didn't get that from Tito this year for reasons. Injury's part of it. Also, poor performance is another. You didn't get that slack picked up. Joseph had another monster year, but you didn't have the secondary goal scorer in the same way that you've had in previous years. And that's something to be considered. And how you address that is going to be one of the big stories for me in the off season. You scored 12 less goals. So, I mean, for one, it's not some dramatic, huge difference. You scored 12 less, and you can chalk that up to Miguel Almiron. You can chalk that up to a drop from Tito Villalba. Everybody else was pretty much the same. But are you going to find a secondary goal scorer? And what do you have to do to accommodate a secondary goal scorer? Do you have to play two up top and truly play two up top and find a forward that is a good partner for Joseph Martinez? Are you going to be able to get a goal-scoring winger? If Julian Gressel is back, can he score more goals from a position? Can you put him in a position to score more? Do you need more of a goal scorer on the other side? Because I look at Pitti and Barco especially, as not a goal scorer, as a creator. Pitti can give you some of both, but I don't think he is a goal scorer like Miguel Almiron was in the previous system that Tata Martino played. I think Miguel Almiron had opportunities in transition that they're not the same, and they're not opportunities that suited Pitti Martinez anyway. He's not Miguel Almiron. I think he's a guy who can give you between 5 and 10 goals. That's 5 more than he did this year, but not 10. And I think that's going to be the target for Atlanta United is, can you find a 10-goal scorer to go along with Joseph? Can you get a double-digit goal scorer to go along with Joseph? Do you have one already, and can you play the system that can get that out of them, or do you need to go get one? That's, when you talk about goal scoring, that's what it comes back to for me. You didn't have that secondary option that you've had in the past. That's probably why you scored 12 less. You can rectify that, but that's going to be a big conversation going into 2020.
Dan Murphy thanks us for the therapy this morning and for our good work all season. He hates the playoff format. Sadly, they pull the ball back on the Nagbe no call, and I'm not sure we find another goal. Then with the PK save in our heads, we probably bow out in PKs. Not sure which is worse.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if a goal would have been there if that Toronto goal doesn't happen. I don't know if you would have found a goal in extra time. I don't know what you would have done in extra time. I don't know what else would have changed. I mean, would Toronto have run out of gas? It's possible. Would you have found a goal off a set piece or something? Sure, it's possible. I don't know. It didn't feel like a game where Atlanta was going to score much more. It just was one of those nights. So it's just going to stick with you a little bit because of the opportunity that was there, both last night and in general with MLS Cup. It's gonna stick around a minute.
The Soccer for Good OG Joe Robbins is feeling philosophical and grateful. Atlanta United's in great hands. The club has a winning mentality and fight. 2019 proved its resiliency, a solid soccer brain trust, abundant talent, loyal fans, media attention, great amenities, unique culture. What more can you ask? She can't wait for 2020.
Yeah, the resiliency was a big thing this year. I mean, the amount of injuries this team had to deal with, the changes from Tata Martino to Frank de Boer, the changes from Miguel Almiron's absence, the difficulties in dealing with CONCACAF and playing 47 matches. They're all real. And I know people never want to hear things like that because they feel like it's an excuse, but to say that those things didn't have an impact on the 2019 season for Atlanta United, you're putting blinders on and not being realistic. They did. The injuries absolutely did. But this team still did what they did this year, and it was a successful year. It was not ultimately as successful as it could have been. It was not the most successful. And it feels like you left things on the table, goals last night and potentially an MLS Cup trophy. You left it on the table and didn't take it. Can't make that mistake again.
2 more. KFC found out that Bello played in the draw with Japan last night for action that's going on with other Atlanta United folks that were not at the Benz last night. And
it started last night.
Yeah, and Jim Lepp says, I don't envy the front office this postseason. Difficult decisions without knowing the CBA. I wager the free agency topic is a big part of that negotiation.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about it in terms of the Atlanta United situation when it comes to cap money and allocation money, but the free agency portion is another one. It won't take effect until next year because you will have free agency already open. You will have players making moves unless the CBA gets done here very quickly, and I have not heard any reason to think that's going to happen. So it would be free agency for next year. I think the impacts this year in the offseason, could it impact some of the moves you make? Sure, because you might expect that players will get to free agency faster, so you might make moves differently because of that. But I think it's a limited one. I think more than anything, it's going to be the cap space. It's going to be other roster rules, potential roster size that affect your thinking here. It's hard because you're planning for a 2020 season and you don't exactly know the rules that you'll be playing under yet. You're making guesses, and you've got to leave yourself some wiggle room that you can't go nuts thinking, oh, well, the cap's going to triple. Well, if it doesn't, then you're screwed. So you've got to be somewhat cautious, but you've got to also take some chances, knowing that you will have more to work with, you would expect.
We're officially caught up, sir.
I think that's enough today. No breaks from 9:20 on.
Yep.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens
on
these kind of shows.
Yeah. But no, it's the word that came to mind for me was gutted. That was the first word that popped into my head when it came to what happened last night. You get that feeling in the pit of your stomach, and when everything is finally final, then now it's okay. This is what happens, and it's where you go from here. And there are going to be players for one reason or another that will not be back. And so, yeah, there is that thought of it being the end of an era. And I know that at the top of the list, you know, we've talked about Cap a lot ever since he made the announcement. And I hope that Michael stays and continues to interact in one way or the other. I mean, if he goes and lives where he wants to live, but then is still an active part of the franchise in whatever way he sees, in whatever way they'd like to have him come back, would love to see it. Would love to see him with a whistle and a bullhorn as a coach, just to continue to have that impact on the younger players coming up through the system. But it's a year that we can all look at and sit there and go, they've had a damn good year, because how many other teams can sit there and say, well, they've pulled 2 championships, had the opportunity for a third, and have continued to build on what they've wanted to have as their identity from the absolute start. And the resiliency, like we've talked about the last 10 or 15 minutes, about all the injuries that have occurred, and continuing to make something out of whole cloth when it comes to lineups occasionally. And just from the acquisitions and seeing the new guys come in, and seeing an Emerson Hyndman become integrated, seeing a Justin Miram and how much he enjoys his time with Atlanta United, and seeing how everyone who's a part of that roster just dives in and are appreciated by the fans. And you ended up just short. You did a lot better than 20 plus other franchises in MLS, and they're going to chase after it again. But the off season really isn't that big anymore. And you went through the timetable as to what the next markers are. And so it's, we aren't going anywhere. There's a lot of stuff to talk about and a lot of other things to do as we get ready, because as you said, probably shortly after the new year, everything gets back at it. But a lot of stuff to talk about, and can't thank everybody who is a part of our timeline on a daily basis to let us know what they're thinking, so we can have a great conversation and an education and a sharing of thoughts and ideas on a daily basis.
We're really lucky to be able to do this. So Thank you for allowing us to talk to you guys on a regular basis about this stuff. This is going to be a very different off season for Atlanta United, not just because of potential roster changes, but I think more and more you see that people around the world look at what's happening in Atlanta United, and people around the world are going to ask questions. And as players, I think, go their separate ways for time off and potentially before another move, you're going to have a lot of things that get said, and you're going to have a lot of things that are going to be difficult at times because of players that you've grown to love that might not be back. You're going to have a lot of questions about what happens next, and we'll do the best that we can to navigate the whole thing. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be a lot of challenges in it. There's going to be a lot of noise I think it's picked up every offseason, and this one with all the potential change, there's going to be even more noise. Rumors every day. I've already seen rumors about Pity Martinez to Brazil. Okay. I don't rule anything out at all, because I think it is a little bit of a chapter closing in some ways and preparing for a new one. And you'll see more change this time around. How much? We'll have to wait and see. And which ones? We'll have to wait and see. But it's going to be a fun ride this offseason, and I think you have a lot of things to look back at and remember from 2019 very fondly. So we'll be back tomorrow to start that look ahead to 2020 and start navigating the whole process along with y'all. So thanks for listening. Thanks for all of the reactions all season long. And tomorrow, essentially, 2020 begins in a lot of ways. So we'll be back to talk about it in the morning. Much plot, y'all.
Much plot, y'all.